From the earliest chapters of human history, dogs have stood as irreplaceable companions. Not only during hunts, but also throughout the long journey of evolution. For these upright primates, survival was a daily equation. Their brains, though larger than those of apes, were still modest in size. Their most basic need was simple: calories. Tubers and roots, underground storage organs, were a safeguard against starvation, especially in the harsh, dry seasons. Early humans were not apex predators. They existed in the middle of the food chain, both hunters and prey. They had to compete with packs of wild dogs and evade massive predators like the rock python that ruled the ground. A simple flaked pebble, a sharp fragment, became the key to unlocking new food sources. The decision to intervene was not an act of mercy, it was an act of seizing. A calculated robbery. The brain adapted instantly. When one tool failed, it sought another. A heavy stone, the most primitive weapon, became the final solution, its impact crushing the skull. This was intelligence solving problems in real time. On the barren grasslands, water was more precious than food. The ability to move this resource, even a few precious mouthfuls, required a chain of sequential thought. A problem arose: how to carry water. The solution emerged: a container. This thick leaf now became an extension of the mind. The act of carrying and offering it was an intentional investment. It required planning, memory of place, and the capacity to link an action giving water to a future outcome, the animal's survival. This marked a major leap in cognition. The sharp stone was the greatest invention of this age, the cutting blade of the early Pleistocene. For the first time, this primate could slice through thick hide and dense muscle, tasks impossible for dull teeth and weak nails. Access to meat and marrow brought a dense supply of nutrients and fats, the very fuel a growing, energy-hungry brain required. The wolf, once a pack hunter, now wounded and alone, saw opportunity. It followed the toolmaker, not out of loyalty, but calculation. The prehistoric human was a potential food source. This was the first step in a long dance. The boldest individuals of the wild began to approach the fire of a new mammal. The control of fire was a monumental turning point. Striking flint to create sparks was an evolutionary breakthrough. Fire changed everything. It offered a circle of light and warmth within the terrifying dark. It kept nocturnal predators at bay. Yet its greatest power lay in digestion. Cooking transformed meat, making it easier to chew and digest. It pre-digested food outside the body, releasing an abundance of calories. This surplus of energy was the true nourishment for the expanding brain. The act of sharing this resource, tossing a piece of meat to the wolf, drew a new boundary. The wolf was no longer just a competitor, it was a guest, a creature permitted to exist at the edge of the human world. The pact had been made. Humans, with poor night vision and dull hearing, were vulnerable during sleep. The savannah night belonged to predators and scavengers, like hyenas. But the wolf was a creature of the dark. Its ears and nose painted a vivid picture of the night. When it barked, it was not just self-defense, it was guarding its new territory, the place of fire and food. This was reciprocity. The human investment of food was repaid with safety. It marked the birth of symbiosis. The wolf became a living alarm system, and, for the first time, the toolmaker could truly rest. The mind of the toolmaker was a vast library of the landscape. Survival depended not only on knowing what was edible, but also what was useful. Knowledge of plants and their properties was accumulated and passed down. Recognizing a specific plant and understanding its healing power required complex causal reasoning. If I apply this, the swelling will go down. This was abstract thought. For the wolf, allowing the primate to touch its wounded flesh demanded a new level of trust. The relationship was shifting from mere opportunism to interspecies care. The toolmaker was now associated not only with food and safety, but with healing. The partnership now yielded active rewards. The senses of the upright primate were limited. They found water only where they could see it. But the wolf's world was built on scent. Detect moisture deep beneath cracked, dry earth, a sense the toolmaker would never possess. The wolf's digging instinct became a map. human's dexterous hands turned that instinct into action, digging deeper and faster. Together, they achieved what neither could alone: survival amid scarcity. They had become a cooperative unit. The hunt revealed their differences. The toolmaker was slow. His throwing weapons, like curved sticks, were often inaccurate. Small, swift prey were nearly impossible to catch. But the wolf was built for the chase, a machine of speed and agility. This was the dawn of cooperative hunting. The wolf's speed compensated for human slowness. The final act, however, was revolutionary. The wolf relinquished its prey. This was not natural behavior. It was learned cooperation, trading a small, immediate meal for a greater, lasting reward, safety, fire, and access to larger hunts only the human pack could provide. The bond had deepened so much that the toolmaker could now shape the wolf's behavior. The wolf's instinct was to bark at threats, but in a world of larger predators, sound meant death. Silence meant survival. The prehistoric human had to teach the wolf restraint. This act, using a signal to override an instinct, marked the beginning of training. In return, the wolf displayed remarkable intelligence and adaptability, learning to suppress its nature and read human cues. This was natural selection in motion. Only those wolves capable of mastering the new silent language of the hunt were allowed to stay. That silence had now become a weapon. Even with tools, this primate remained an inefficient hunter. Their throwing spears lacked the force and accuracy to bring down large, swift prey. Failure was far more common than success. But now they had an ally. The wolf contributed speed and an understanding of pack tactics. More importantly, it understood intention. A simple gesture, a hand signal, could communicate a complex plan. Circle around. Drive it this way. This was coordinated interspecies hunting. The human mind envisioned the trap. The wolf's speed closed it. For the first time, two entirely different predators united their skills toward a shared goal. Killing the prey was only half the battle. Defending it was the other half. The smell of blood and the sight of the kill attracted every scavenger on the savannah. A lone human could easily be overwhelmed. But this new pack had division of labor. while the toolmaker, armed with sharp stones, handled the delicate task of skinning and cutting. The wolf took up guard duty. It actively defended the shared resource. Fire and tools processed the carcass. Teeth and growls protected it. The meal that followed was not just nourishment, it was reinforcement of cooperation. Guardian was rewarded. The relationship was no longer one-sided, it had become mutual. The upright primate had excellent eyesight, able to see color and shapes from afar. Yet their world was one of light and forward vision. They were vulnerable to what lay hidden, dangers camouflaged beneath their feet. The wolf lived in a different sensory universe. Its nose and ears painted a world invisible to human senses. It could detect subtle changes in air scent, the faint hiss of scales sliding across dry leaves. The wolf had become an early warning system, an extension of human perception. It protected them from unseen threats, filling the deadly gaps in their awareness. Hunting was perilous work. Animals like wild boars were heavily armed and could easily kill a fragile primate. An injury, even minor, a broken arm or deep gash, meant no hunting, no toolmaking, no defense. In this harsh world, disability often equaled death. The wolf's intervention again revealed change. It was no longer just protecting a meal, it was protecting its companion. It placed itself in danger to defend the toolmaker. The climate was not always a hidden enemy. Sometimes it attacked openly. Sudden dust and sandstorms could reduce visibility to zero, disorient and suffocate. For the injured, exposure meant certain death from cold or predation. Once again, animal instinct led the way. The wolf sought shelter by nature. Giant termite mounds, hard as stone, were natural fortresses of the plains. The warmth of two breathing bodies inside that narrow chamber was more than comfort. It was survival. The animal had guided the human to safety. Within the temporary safety of the shelter, a new kind of behavior emerged. This brain was not only capable of planning for the future, it could also reflect on the past. Using charcoal and colored earth, the prehistoric human recreated a memory. This was not a wasteful act, it was the birth of symbolism. turn a life-or-death event, the battle with the python, the wolf's intervention, into a static image was among the greatest leaps in cognition. The mind was attempting to understand its place in the world, to record what mattered. Here, abstract thought was born from experience. Injury forced innovation. When muscle failed, intelligence had to prevail. Throwing spears or direct confrontation were no longer options. This creature now relied on a subtler tool. The snare required a mind capable of multi-layered reasoning. It needed to understand materials which fibers were strong enough, animal behavior where the prey would step, and most importantly, patience and delayed gratification. It was a tool that worked in the maker's absence, a plan set into motion. This marked a major step toward environmental control and the creation of a stable food supply. When large protein sources dwindled, the diet had to expand. But foraging for plants was always a gamble. Bright colors could mean ripeness or poison. Trial and error was a deadly teacher. Now, the partnership offered a new solution. The wolf, with its different digestion and senses, became a biological taster. By watching the animal eat without harm, the human gained crucial information without personal risk. The bond reduced the deadly danger of foraging, a shared learning that transcended species. The savannah was ruled by giants. The lion pride reigned supreme. Against them, the upright primate had only one choice: to flee. Climbing remained a vital defense, a gift from arboreal ancestors. Their shoulders and arms still retained flexibility for escape. The act of pulling the wolf up into the tree was extraordinary. Strength and exposed the climber to peril. The wolf was no longer just an ally outside the circle. It had been brought into the innermost sphere of safety. It had been accepted as one of the pack. To be part of the pack meant sharing a language. The near-death encounter with the lions created a new need, an instant warning system that worked across distance and dense vegetation. Hand gestures were not enough. The short, sharp whistle was not an instinctive cry. It was a symbol, a sound invented and assigned meaning. Danger run. Now, the wolf's ability to learn and react to this abstract signal formed the foundation of true cooperation. Complex, deliberate communication was beginning to evolve between the two species. The howl was an ancient thread, a call woven deep into the genes. It was the language of the pack, a signal for reunion, the hunt, and mating, a promise of order where every member knew its place. To refuse that call was an unnatural act. It marked a profound fracture, a conflict between millions of years of instinct and a new, singular bond. Fire, shared food, and mutual protection had created a new gravity. This was a pivotal moment. The wolf was making a choice, turning its back on its own kind to stay with a primate. In these moments of personal decision, the evolutionary path of a species began to shift. Water was the most precious and scarce resource on the savannah. Finding it was not luck. It required a mental map of the land. The ability to predict where water might lie underground, then dig for it, represented a profound cognitive leap. But vital resources always invited conflict. In this world, a stranger was not a friend, but a direct competitor for food and water. Hostility was the default reaction. The bond The wolf now responded by defending its new territory and pack. Sharing a vital resource like water became a complex negotiation, requiring trust, calculation, and the realization that cooperation could outweigh competition. The partnership between species now faced a new challenge. The complexity of human social hierarchy. The animal, hardwired for dominance order, struggled to find its place within the human pack. The growl was a probe, a question of rank. the man's intervention was more than peacekeeping. It was an assertion of leadership. He was redefining the pack's rules. He had become not only an ally, but a mediator, managing relationships within a multi-species group. The primate brain was now performing one of its highest functions, maintaining social cohesion. Tool evolution was never linear. It was a burst of ideas tested by small groups. The throwing spear required muscle. It was an extension of the arm. But the bow was a revolution of concept, a weapon system capable of storing and releasing energy. It demanded multiple stages of craftsmanship, selecting flexible wood, processing sinew into string, shaping small, razor-sharp stone tips. This was the first true long-range weapon, changing the dynamics of the hunt entirely. Now, a weaker individual could bring down large prey from a safe distance. And the sharing of this intricate knowledge marked the birth and spread of technical culture. Meat was unreliable. The backbone of survival lay in expanding the diet. The savannah teemed with an almost endless resource: grass seeds. But they were protected. Hard shells and complex compounds made them nearly indigestible. Tools were the key. Simple grinding stones marked a leap in food processing. They broke the seed's structure, allowing nutrients to be absorbed. Adding water and fire was more than cooking. It was transformation. Indigestible starch was turned into accessible energy. This was the birth of food production, the act of turning the inedible into a meal. This was one of the most profound moments in the evolution of cognition. Sound was no longer just a signal for alarm, gathering, or threat. It had become a symbol.
Lyra. Lyra. Lyra.
A sequence of arbitrary sounds was now linked to a specific individual, I and you. This was external evidence of self-awareness.
Lupo.
Naming the animal was the ultimate recognition of its individuality.
Lupo.
and the animal's ability to learn and respond to that abstract sound as its own name revealed remarkable
Maleo
intelligence.
moabilis.
Lupo.
It was no longer merely the wolf. It had become a recognized member of the family. Symbolic language had been born. A complex pack produced complex emotions. This was not simple aggression over food. It was a personal reaction. The animal sensed a change in hierarchy and in the sharing of resources. It was challenging the system. The prehistoric man's response was crucial. He had to enforce the new pack's rules, one that prioritized the females, perhaps to ensure survival and reproduction. The animal's submission, retreat instead of fight, showed complete acceptance of the human-led order. It understood and obeyed the new rules, even when they went against its immediate desires. The leopard was the ghost of the night, a predator perfectly adapted for ambushing primates. To a creature with poor night vision, it was the perfect killer. The animal, though recently demoted in rank, acted instantly. Its senses cut through the darkness. To attack a far stronger apex predator was an extraordinary act. This was no longer calculated cooperation for food. It was pure loyalty. Its protective instinct now extended to every member of the pack, even those it had recently seen as rivals. The bond had been tested and proved stronger than self-preservation. Fire could warm a place, but not be carried. To survive cold nights or harsh seasons, the hairless primate body needed a different solution. Throwing a hide over the shoulders was inefficient. The breakthrough came with toolmaking, the creation of clothing. This required an entirely new toolkit, a bone arrow for piercing holes, and tough, flexible sinew for thread. By sewing hides together, they created a second skin that trapped warm air close to the body. This invention conserved energy, allowing them to expand their range and survive in environments once impossible. Not every act served immediate survival. This sound was not an alarm or hunting signal. It was something entirely new, the expression of an inner emotional state. brain had grown complex enough not only to feel, but to seek abstract expression for those feelings. Melody and rhythm carried no linguistic meaning, yet they conveyed emotion, peace, contentment. This was the seed of art, a powerful social tool that united the group, soothed fear, and shared experience without words. A cave was a shelter found. A hut was a shelter created. The difference was fundamental. It marked a leap from passively occupying the landscape to actively shaping it. Building, even a temporary structure, required planning, foresight, and complex cooperation. Demanded understanding materials, which branches could bear weight, which hides could block the wind. More importantly, it created a center, a fixed point to return to, a safe space for sharing food and raising young. Creating a home instead of merely finding a cave was the beginning of settlement, transforming the structure of the pack. The Ice Age climate was unstable, defined by violent extremes. Long droughts could be shattered by torrential rains. For those living near cracked valleys or dry riverbeds, flash floods were constant threats. A barren riverbed could become a raging torrent within minutes, a deadly trap. Harsh environmental pressure demanded predictive intelligence. Survival depended not only on finding shelter, but on where to build it. A brutal lesson in hydrology and geography. Reading subtle signs, a shift in wind, the behavior of animals, became the line between life and death. The greatest adaptation was not strength, but flexibility. Isolated by rising waters, familiar land-based food sources vanished. Survival now required exploiting an entirely new environment. Aquatic resources, fish, amphibians, shellfish, offered dense nutrients and essential fatty acids critical for brain development. Turning to the water, even temporarily, showed astonishing behavioral adaptability, the ability to find opportunity within disaster. As the flood receded, It left behind a torn world. The land was no longer the dry, safe savanna, but a maze of mud and swirling waters. This was the realm of ambush predators, ancient reptiles that had ruled riverbanks for millions of years with patience and deadly precision. Wolf, however, possessed superior sensory machinery. Its hearing and smell could read the environment in ways humans never could. Its act of distraction was no longer coincidence. It was a deliberate defense strategy. The animal was actively protecting its shared territory, even at great risk. In the prehistoric world, an open wound was a death sentence. Infection was a silent killer. Blood loss drained a hunter's strength. For a wolf, an injured leg meant the end of the hunt and abandonment by the pack. The intervention of the female marked a new cognitive step. This was not magic, it was experimental medicine. Spider silk, composed of complex proteins, could almost instantly stop bleeding. It formed a natural barrier, helping platelets to clot. After the flood, the land became a breeding ground for disease. Stagnant water teemed with bacteria and parasites. For a body already pushed to its limits, a high fever could quickly lead to exhaustion, dehydration, and death. The bitter bark he sought was likely willow bark. For countless generations, both animals and early humans had discovered, through trial and error, that this bark contained natural compounds with strong pain-relieving and fever-reducing properties. The ponds left after the flood were both life and death. They were ruled by one of the savanna's most aggressive and unpredictable creatures. Not a predator, but fiercely territorial, especially when with young. With massive jaws capable of crushing a canoe and surprising speed on land, the hippopotamus was an unstoppable force. Facing a threat no strength could overcome, the mind sought another path. The short, sharp sound was not a cry of fear, it was a trained signal. This was the peak of cognitive coordination, the human brain providing strategy, the animal delivering speed and controlled aggression. Every disaster brought opportunity. When the waters receded, the mudflats became new ecosystems, filled with creatures adapted to life in sludge. Eels and mudfish, trapped in the muck, were rich sources of fat and nutrients, easily harvested while larger prey had fled or died. But for humans, there was a psychological barrier. The slick, serpentine shapes triggered a primal fear, an ancient instinct against venomous reptiles. Disgust was a built-in survival mechanism. The wolf, an opportunistic predator, was free of such fear. To it, this was simply food. Its actions became a living demonstration, proof that the resource was safe. The humans faced a choice: obey their ancient fear or trust their new ally. After catastrophe, the need for secure, solid shelter became urgent. Huts of branches and hides were too fragile against nature's wrath. A stone cave offered complete protection from rain, wind, and cold. But caves were prized real estate, not just by humans, but by the Ice Age's fiercest predators: cave bears, hyenas, lions. Entering an unknown cave was a life or death gamble. Once again, human senses fell short. Their eyes needed light. Their noses couldn't detect a sleeping predator's scent. The wolf, with superior night vision and a powerful sense of smell, became the scout. It could detect old traces, lingering scent, stale urine, or the faint breath of another creature in the dark. Its bark was more than a signal. The echoes off stone walls gave it spatial awareness, a sense of depth and size. When it declared the cave safe, that was the group's truest assurance. The flood had wiped away homes and mental maps. With rivers changed and landmarks gone, navigation by terrain became useless. Humans were lost in their own world. Survival now required a new method, one not bound to the ever-changing Earth, but to something constant. At night, the sky offered the ultimate map. This was a great leap in abstract thought, the ability to find order in chaos. Thousands of random points of light were grouped into meaningful shapes, constellations. Humans noticed that while the land shifted, the stars did not. They moved with steady precision. In the southern hemisphere, the Southern Cross became an anchor, pointing toward a fixed direction. By linking an abstract shape in the sky with a concrete direction on land, humans created the first compass. Marking symbols on the ground became the birth of cartography. A natural cave offered safety, but not comfort. It was cold, damp, and open to the wind. To turn a cave into a home, humans had to transform it. This was the beginning of architecture. By erecting a barrier at the entrance, they did more than block the wind. They created a microclimate. The wall trapped heat and kept the interior dry and warm. It was a group effort. capable of imitation, joined in the building process. Its act of carrying materials, perhaps an instinct for hoarding, now became part of collective work. The humans used the bone it brought as a building piece, accepting the animal's contribution as part of the shared task. In the struggle for survival, the greatest threat to early humans was not always beasts, but other humans. Resources, especially a secure cave with fire and nearby water, were priceless. Territorial conflict was inevitable. This family's defense now had multiple layers. The first was hearing. The wolf served as sentry, detecting danger from afar while the humans slept. Its growl was an early alarm, giving the group time to prepare. For intruders, the sight was shocking. They didn't just see humans, they saw a predator seemingly allied with them, guarding the entrance. The combination of firelight, ranged weapons like the female's bow, and a fierce animal standing watch transformed the cave into a fortress. The strangers retreated, not because of battle, but because of deterrence. Pregnancy was the most vulnerable stage of life. The female's nutritional needs rose sharply, while her ability to forage or hunt declined. The survival of the family and the next generation now rested entirely on the efforts of the others. Pressure on the male was immense. Hunting large prey was uncertain. Failure was common. But now there was a second hunter. The wolf, guided by pack instinct, joined the provisioning effort. Bringing food back to the cave was no random act. It was complex instinct. In wolf packs, individuals feed nursing mothers and their young. The animal had now fully integrated the human family into its pack structure. The birth of a new life was the most fragile moment of all. Nature, the smell of blood and the cries of an infant were open invitations to predators. Hyenas, big cats, and scavengers could detect it from miles away. All adult attention was focused inward, leaving them defenseless. The wolf's role became critical. It stood at the threshold, the boundary between safety and danger. It was no passive observer, but an active guardian. Growling, pacing, radiating aggression. It created a perimeter of defense, masking the scent and sound from within with its own threatening presence. Any predator drawn to the cave now faced another predator, alert, strong, and fiercely protective of its territory. An infant's cry is a survival signal, demanding attention, but it also causes stress within the group. The wolf's reaction was one of the most complex behaviors of all. Its gentle licking combined curiosity, grooming to remove unfamiliar scent, and, above all, soothing. It was applying its pack language to the new member. Crying stopped instantly. warm, wet touch triggered a sense of safety. Even at a few days old, the child recognized the animal. Its scent was familiar, part of the family since birth. When the tiny hand gripped the fur, it was a reflex, the primal grasping of a primate. The child instinctively clung to warmth and protection, as it would to its mother. Play was not a waste of time. It was the most important work of childhood. Through play, vital survival skills were honed in safety. This game of hide-and-seek was complex training. The child practiced hiding, silence, and patience, essential skills for both evasion and stalking. For the wolf, it was an exercise in its greatest strength, scent. Using hundreds of millions of olfactory receptors, it detected where the child was hidden, even in darkness. The animal, now old, had taken on a new role. No longer a frontline hunter or guard, it had become a teacher. Daily foraging required long travel. A small child quickly became a burden. Its slow pace endangered the group. Parents were torn between two conflicting duties: finding enough food and protecting their offspring. They could not dig roots, gather plants, and carry the child at once. Here, the wolf assumed an unprecedented role. By carrying the child, it resolved the dilemma. This demanded great effort from an aging animal and deep understanding of the group's state. It recognized the child's exhaustion and intervened. The animal's role was now complete. It had become a caregiver. It freed the adult's hands and attention, allowing them to focus fully on foraging. The group's efficiency multiplied. Humans gathered more food, while the child remained safe and kept pace. Curiosity drives learning, but it also invites danger. A small child could not recognize all threats in its world. Baboons, especially adult males, were aggressive and powerful, with long fangs and immense strength. They posed a direct, lethal threat to an unguarded child. The old animal's response was instinctive, not calculated. Though weakened, it faced a far stronger opponent without hesitation. This was the ultimate act of protection. It did not fight for food or territory, it fought for a life. The animal placed its frail body between the child and the attacker. Its goal was not victory, but time. Every second it held the enemy off was a second gained for the adults to arrive. This self-sacrifice was the peak of loyalty, transcending even self-preservation. The animal was willing to die to protect the child of another species. The transmission of knowledge is the foundation of culture. Adults try to teach through abstract concepts, signs, directions, meanings of tracks. But a child's mind learned best through imitation and tangible experience. The animal again became the teacher in a more direct way. It didn't explain the tracks, it presented the result, the prey itself. Instantly, the child's attention focused. This is the goal. Then it demonstrated the method. Lowering its body, moving silently, stalking, it performed each step of a successful hunt. The child learned by watching a master predator. This cooperation was no longer about strength or senses, it was about shared intelligence. Human reasoning tools, planning and animal instinct silence, speed, scent were merging. The child would grow up with hybrid hunting skills, more effective than either species alone. When the pressures of survival eased, when the cave was safe and food stored, the human mind found time for something extraordinary. The sounds created were not for warning or command. By piercing holes into a hollow reed, humans accidentally discovered the laws of sound. They had invented music. This was art. It did not help kill an antelope, but it calmed the fear of the night. It did not heal wounds, but it bound the family together through shared emotion. In the stillness of the cave, the first notes of humanity echoed, the voice of a mind rising above hunger, seeking beauty. The cycle of nature is inescapable. This alliance had given the wolf a life far beyond what it could have had in the wild, protected from greater predators, fed steadily, healed when injured. It had grown old beside the family it chose. For a wild creature, death was usually quick and solitary. They did not discard the body. They buried it. Burial is one of humanity's earliest signs of symbolic thought and spirituality. The recognition that an individual's value extends beyond life. To perform such a ritual for an animal meant that, in their minds, it held equal standing with them. They laid it beneath a great baobab, a natural monument, a sacred place. Humans had given the animal food, warmth, and finally, something no other creature had ever received: remembrance.